I'm Joshua Hicks. Welcome to my channel, where I talk about science fiction, fantasy, history, open source software, and basically anything else that interests me. Today, I have a very interesting question. Why would the Reapers from Mass Effect probably have won? Now, to get to the heart of why I think they would have probably won, we need to start from the beginning. So, in the middle of the 22nd century, humanity has been digging on Mars and finds an alien data cache. It's official. We're not alone in the universe anymore. This is craziness. What? And so, very quickly, we start learning about the new physics that, well, old physics really, but new to humanity physics. And we find out that there's this object that's been orbiting around Pluto for a very long time. And it's not just a block of ice. It is, in fact, a mass relay. Now, what is a mass relay? Well, it turns out that based on the new physics that is discovered on the surface of Mars, that there are things called mass effect fields. Now, these mass effect fields allow you to sort of Higgs boson-y-ish affect the mass of an object. You can increase the mass or decrease the mass. Now, quickly, it turns out that you can basically have force powers if you were hit with what's termed element zero before, I think it was in utero for humans, and then Asari just kind of have it innate. And so, you know, the hard science isn't super hard with this stuff, but hey, force powers. And then it turns out that not only people can affect the mass of an object. So what we've uncovered through the data cache is that the Protheans, this ancient civilization that vanished without a trace for no seeming reason 50,000 years ago, were quite industrious because they created mass relays. And with a mass relay, you can affect the mass of a ship. And through a process that's pseudoscience, basically, you're able to then fling that object way faster than the speed of light. And it turns out the one that we found orbiting Pluto, or in the proximity of Pluto, was not the only one. In fact, there aren't just a handful of these throughout our little section of space. There are hundreds of these things, if not thousands of them, all over the galaxy. And so very quickly, humanity finds out we're not alone in the universe, and we're now coming in contact with other life. So things are looking quite exciting. But the problem is, as it turns out, it wasn't the Protheans that built these things. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. It turns out these things built the mass relays. And these things are a billion, with a B, year-old race of hyper-intelligent supercomputers built inside massive destroyer ships. Well, that's a bit of a problem now, isn't it? Uh, hmm. So, as we uncover, spoilers for the whole franchise, obviously, as we find out, these things have been conducting a regular genocide every 50,000 years. So it wasn't just that they wiped out the Protheans 50,000 years ago. They wiped out the progenitors that the Protheans thought had built the mass relays, and the progenitors that came before them, and before them, and before them. And they have been doing this systematically for a very long time. This is where my theory crafting comes in, and my thesis for the video. Why do I think that the Mass Effect Reapers should have won the fight? Even though it was very close, we still win. Because, quite frankly, the Mass Effect 3 Reapers are pretty stupid. It's not a controversial thing for me to say that Mass Effect 3 is overall the worst of the trilogy, and not just the ending, like the whole thing is just way worse because the people that worked on, developed, and wrote the first two games were gone by the time the third game came around. So, wonder why that happened, but anyway, I'm going to show you something that may not make sense to you right now, but in a moment I will explain exactly why that things should be a bit different. I present to you a router and a smartphone. Now, what does that have to do with the Reapers? Well, these are modern technologies. And humanity has been doing some stuff already with our current technology that I think it's pretty safe to assume the Reapers, who are billion-year-old super intelligent machines, would probably be able to figure out some of this stuff as well. So, a few decades of cybersecurity, a billion years of genocide, which one is gonna, produce more stuff? YouTube, as an example. So, you're potentially not on there, but this is where I'm ultimately uploading. So, for the example, say you're watching this video on YouTube. There are a few options for you to do that. First, especially if you're on a computer or you just don't want to use the app, you can simply type in the URL and you're in without an account. Now, having access to this video through not having an account means that all you can really do is watch it. If you had a user account, you could then like, comment, and subscribe, or not. Up to you. But without the account, those options are not available to you. Above user accounts are the admin accounts, which can decide who can have what account, what things can be uploaded, which accounts to ban. They could also, though in this specific scenario would probably not happen in real life, but they could decide if you don't have an account, you're no longer allowed to access YouTube's services. Now, you might be realizing what I'm getting at here, but just in case, not everybody is a technical person. the Mass Effect relays are massive constructs developed by a hyper-advanced, hyper-intelligent machine race, which clearly has some level of computation capabilities inside the relay itself, because it's able to read the mass of a ship or multiple ships in range, determine what level of Mass Effect field it needs to apply onto that ship, and that, the size, shape, the weight, all of these things would probably come into consideration, and then safely fling it across the galaxy way faster than anything else in the universe is capable of doing. And then the next one has to be able to receive all of this information to then safely catch it without, having it just fly off into the ether or smash into something nearby and explode. So clearly, a router and a smartphone and a little, video hosting service is small fry in comparison to what's running inside a mass relay. So why don't the Reapers, when they decide it's time for the next cycle, we're in range, so why didn't Sovereign, in the first game, simply send a signal to a relay and then wirelessly, without the need for the keepers and all that stuff, be able to just trigger the mass relay in the Citadel, and then everybody shows up remotely, and now we simply stop allowing user accounts anymore. Now, let's say Mass Effect 1 happened the way it did because the Keepers were involved in the process of sending these signals, and that's just another part of that signal. Okay, fine. But by the time Mass Effect 3 rolls around, and Harbinger, who was made the leader of the Reapers in Mass Effect 3, though kind of struck me more as a mad scientist Reaper in Mass Effect 2, but whatever, the leader of the Reapers has the admin console command access, root privileges, and simply says, because it is basically just in charge of a massive ISP, which, internet service provider, hosts a network. So all of these people, alien races, who have been using the mass relays, because deliberately in the games they specify that part of the use of the relays and seeding the universe with them, or the galaxy with them, was so that they could more easily guarantee their technology was what was used in the development of these other species that would eventually get wiped out by them. So they've already, in the games, placed the option for simply the ISP says, you don't have internet access anymore. The Reapers say, you, puny little creatures, cannot use our relays anymore. And then everybody's dead. Because essentially what would then happen is they lock all the relays down, only user accounts have access, the only people with user accounts are the Reaper ships themselves, and you just flood in to a star system and do your Reaper thing. They do all the harvesting, they do all the brainwashing, they do all of the horrendous things that they're doing. But there's no ships coming from somewhere else to help. Because nobody can use the mass relays anymore. There's not even distress calls going out saying, hey, please help us out, because all non-user accounts have been banned, meaning even the distress calls are not getting out. So it could take literal centuries for these people over here who would have gladly provided aid to even find out what's happening. Because that's how long it takes for the light that would indicate what's happening to travel through space to get to these people over here. And by then, by the time they all even see that this is starting to happen, it's already over, and the Reapers have already taken the next solar system completely out. And then the next one. And then the next one. They could be right on your doorstep before you know, or they could just show up. And that's the first time you had any idea what was going on, except for the fact that the mass relays stopped working. It's game over. You know, we have a situation where the Citadel in Mass Effect 3 is not this overburdened city with thousands upon thousands of refugees flooding in. It is dead. The only people there are the ones who were there before the Reapers said no more. And so we would have a situation, if this is what would have really happened in Mass Effect 3, where EDI, who has a cyber attack suite, as mentioned in Mass Effect 2, has to somehow, you know, Shepard would be involved naturally with some kind of quest before leaving the solar system in the very beginning of the game, rather than going to Mars and then finding out that the Illusive Man has, you know, betrayed humanity and all that stuff. We have to sneak onto a Reaper without being detected and steal its login credentials, which they also have because of Mass Effect 2. We learned that they have IFFs, basically friend or foe tags, and we've also seen through Mass Effect 2 that they can, in fact, alter their relays to act on the IFFs. The whole thing of Mass Effect 2 was we have to get through the Omega-4 relay. No one who's ever gone to do that has come back alive, because it turns out that relay is set to only safely allow people, or Reapers, to pass through. Except that Reaper has been dead for hundreds of thousands of years, just sitting there, orbiting in space around the brown dwarf. So why haven't they deactivated its user account yet? You know? Because that's also the thing. It shouldn't just be able to, oh, we have an IFF now, we can travel. No, no, no. You have to stealthily steal the credentials without it or any of the other Reapers in the vicinity finding out. Which would result in a very tense game, because if you manage to pull that off in the beginning of Mass Effect 3, the Normandy is now the only ship in the galaxy that can still use the mass relays. And then you would be the only one aiding, and you would be building up. And of course, naturally, Earth would probably be the only place getting attacked, unless you had some kind of timer-based thing of, oh, you did so many quests before you went to Earth. Everything's gone now. They're attacking the Asari. And it's like, oh, you know, we're not here to save Earth. It's how quickly can we get enough IFFs to build up a fleet with as few quests as possible, because every 10 missions we lose a solar system to the Reap permanently. Everyone there is dead because they won. Oh, and to the next one, and they're continuing. Like, Mass Effect 3 would have been very different. I don't know if it would have been overall a better game, but I think in a more cybersecurity aware scenario, that's exactly what the Reapers would have done. Like, in real life, if they really did exist, they'd have better cybersecurity practices than we do, not worse. So, yeah, I don't really see us winning in that situation. But anyway, that's my opinion. If you disagree, feel free to leave a comment. Since you made it all the way through to the video, clearly you enjoyed some aspect of it, so go ahead and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. Stick around for my mailing list down below, and you can get access to the first few chapters of my soon-to-be debut novel. Thanks for sticking around.